Queen of the Cold Heart. Chapter 1. In the court 10 years after marriage, Queen Mulangzin sat on a carved palace chair, holding a cup of warm tea with her fingers. The light spots outside the window shone obliquely into the hall, reflecting on her delicate but smiling face. She recalled the scene 10 years ago when she begged the Song family master with a dead face, but now it has become a secret that no one knows. Emperor Song Yuchen sat on the dragon chair, his eyebrows were picturesque, but his eyes were as distant as frost in the sky. Mulan's heart tightened, and there was a hint of loss in her heart, but she quickly put away her emotions and bent down to salute. The concubine has finished the morning court. I don't know how your majesty is today. Song Yuchen glanced at her lightly. The court is busy. This sentence was like a cold sea water, slowly submerging Mulangzin's heart. She sighed and thought, after 10 years of hard work, she finally became the queen, but the warmth in her heart never returned to her as she wished. She picked up the teacup and felt bitterness on the tip of her tongue, which seemed to reflect her state of mind in the past 10 years. Hard work, obedience, and patience, but it was still far from enough. Chapter 2. Mulangzin recalled the scene when she first entered the palace. She was young and wore a plain skirt carefully selected by the Song family, and when facing Song Yuchen, who was about to become her husband, she was both expectant and apprehensive. When Song Yuchen was young, he was known as a talented talent, warm as jade, but as cold as frost. She silently told herself in her heart, as long as you play well and learn to be obedient and gentle, you will definitely get his approval and love. However, 10 years of time have only been exchanged for Song Yuchen's indifference and alienation. She worked hard to learn court etiquette, mastered the details of every banquet, and even gave advice to Song Yuchen in the court, but every effort was only for a brief pause, and then quickly moved away. She had tried to get closer, trying to melt this iceberg-like man with her tenderness, smile, and even her intelligence. But no matter how hard she tried, Song Yuchen was always just a high-ranking emperor, and she was just a virtuous empress in the eyes of the courtiers, but not his real sweetheart. Chapter 3. The secrets in the palace were surging like a tide, and Mulan knew in her heart that if she wanted to survive in the palace, beauty and virtue alone were not enough. She began to pay attention to the various forces in the palace, secretly accumulated strength, and formed delicate relationships with concubines, eunuchs, and civil and military officials. She learned how to keep a smile at banquets, how to overcome strength with softness in the court, and even learned to retreat as progress, so that Song Yuchen gradually relied on her advice. However, the chill in my heart did not diminish because of this. Whenever it was quiet at night, she stood alone by the dragon couch, looking at the cold moon outside the window, and would think, 10 years of hard work have only been exchanged for loneliness and alienation. She began to understand that love and power are never reciprocated for hard work, especially in this palace with high walls and deep courtyards. Chapter 4. One day, a grand banquet was held in the palace, and Mulangzin wore a phoenix feather dress and stepped into the glorious palace. The civil and military officials all looked sideways, their voices low and subtle, as if guessing the queen's thoughts and scheming. She kept smiling step by step, but secretly calculated in her heart, tonight, something must be done. At the banquet, Song Yuchen sat on the dragon chair, his eyes cold, and only tapped her name when necessary. Mulangzin took a deep breath, her eyes as firm as frost. Since you can't get warmth, then use wisdom and means to protect the interests of yourself and your family. She cleverly guided the civil servant to make suggestions, so that Song Yuchen had to agree, and at this moment, she felt a trace of satisfaction that she hadn't seen in a long time. At least, she still had the ability to control the situation. Chapter 5. After the banquet, Mulangzin strolled alone in the harem garden, the fragrance of flowers wafting with the night breeze. She whispered to herself, it's been 10 years, and even my heart is frozen by the chill. Who am I going to work for? In the night, a mysterious palace maid quietly approached and whispered, Empress, your majesty has mentioned your suggestions on court affairs many times recently, and he a little different. Mulan's heart moved slightly. She understood that maybe his attitude towards her was quietly changing, but this change came too late, and she didn't know if it was out of emotion or intrigue. She looked up at the starry sky and silently told herself, chilling does not mean giving up, but protecting yourself. In this court full of calculations and bizarre things, the only thing she can rely on is herself. Chapter 6. As the situation in the palace changed, Mu Langzhen discovered that Song Yuchen had new palace spies and foreign envoys around him, and the strategies were layered on top of each other. She began to use her familiarity with the court to quietly grasp the information and secretly lay out the layout to prevent her interests in the Song family from being damaged. However, these strategies made her feel even more lonely. She once imagined that after becoming a queen, she could get love, respect, and understanding, but now she only has cold calculations and loneliness. She knows that her destiny will never change because of love, and only wisdom and skill can survive in this palace. Chapter 7. After a court banquet, Mu Langzhen stumbled upon a secret letter mentioning a secret plan related to the succession to the throne. She frowned, knowing in her heart, if she didn't act in advance, she and her family would be in danger. So, she secretly contacted trusted people in the palace and carefully formulated countermeasures. Every action is like stepping on thin ice, and if you are not careful, you may be doomed. Mu Langzhen felt unprecedented pressure, and for the first time, she felt that truly controlling her destiny requires not only wisdom, but also ruthless determination. Chapter 8. However, in this splendid palace full of bizarre lights, danger always looms silently. Mu Langzhen met a mysterious man in the palace. His clothes were like night clouds, and his eyes were deep, as if he could see into all her thoughts. The man whispered, "Queen, if you want to maintain your power, it is not only a strategy, but also a test that you did not expect." Mu Lan was shocked. She felt that this person was not only an informant, but also a messenger of fate. She knew that this court game was far more bizarre and dangerous than she had imagined. Chapter 9. As time passed, Song Yuchen's attitude gradually became subtle, and he paid more attention to Mu Langzhen's words and deeds. But this attention is more like a recognition of wisdom than love. Mu Lan felt bitter in her heart. She understood that 10 years of hard work were still exchanged for indifferent affirmation, not warm emotions. She secretly told herself, since love cannot be forced, then use wisdom, means and family power to control all situations. In this palace of intertwined powers, only chilling can protect the safety of oneself and one's family. Chapter 10. At a court ceremony, Mu Langzhen used calm and precise actions to resolve a secret conspiracy against imperial power. Although Song Yuchen was calm on the surface, a rare surprise and affirmation flashed in his eyes. Mu Lan's heart moved slightly, but she also sighed secretly. Love still cannot be changed, but at least, she has become an existence that cannot be ignored in this court. She looked up at the moonlight outside the window and muttered to herself, chilling may be the best way to protect herself, but it also taught her the power to control her fate. Chapter 11. Mu Langzhen walked in the quiet corridor of the harem, the candlelight flickering, reflecting her delicate but slightly cold face. She held a secret letter in her hand, which hinted at someone intending to interfere in the succession to the throne at the next court ceremony. Secretly calculating in her heart, she understood that this was a danger and an opportunity. The night wind blew into the palace through the window lattice, bringing a chill and reminding her that there is no eternal safety in the palace. Mu Langzhen whispered to herself, since you can't get love, then at least control the power and protect yourself and your family. She stepped into the garden where light and shadow intertwined, and the fragrance of flowers was mixed with the whispers of palace maids and the footsteps of eunuchs. Every sound was like a reminder to her, conspiracies were everywhere. She secretly made up her mind, this time, she wanted to turn the crisis into her advantage. Chapter 12. The next day's ceremony, the palace was magnificent, the officials lined up neatly, and the entire imperial city was immersed in a solemn and oppressive atmosphere. Mu Langzhen was dressed in a light dress with phoenix feathers, and there was still a hint of coldness and arrogance between her eyebrows and eyes. She secretly calculated in her heart, this banquet is the best time to test her resourcefulness, and it is also the key to making her opponent appear. Just as she was walking up the steps of the throne, a mysterious palace maid suddenly quietly approached and whispered, "Queen, be careful, there are uninvited guests in the front hall." Mulan's heart trembled slightly, her eyes were slightly cold, and she nodded slightly, and the palace maids under her quickly laid out protection and secretly changed the banquet layout. When the dinner reached its climax, Mu Langzhen revealed the people who were trying to rebel with her calm demeanor and wise hints. Song Yuchen's face changed slightly, but he quickly regained his composure, his eyes swept across Mulan's heart with a hint of rare approval. Mulan smiled secretly in her heart, "Even if he doesn't love me, I can make myself not to be ignored." Chapter 13. After the banquet, Mu Langzhen sat alone in the palace, the moonlight sprinkled on the ground through the window lattices, and her shadow was stretched long. She thought of herself 10 years ago, who was ignorant and greedy for the throne and love, but now she is completely different. The warmth and coldness of the past 10 years have made her understand one thing: in the court, feelings are not dependence, but fragile bonds, and only power and wisdom are the most reliable shields. Suddenly, a gust of wind brought a whisper, "Queen, someone is asking for an audience outside." Mu Langzhen frowned slightly, and her heart was alert. Who would come to the door at this time? When the door slowly opened, a man in ink-like clothes appeared, with deep eyes and a somewhat unfathomable aura. "Queen, there are some things you must know." The man's tone was low, as if announcing a new change. Chapter 14. Mu Langzhen stared at the man, his heart was shocked. He was holding a dark golden letter in his hand, the light flashed slightly, revealing an unusual power. "This is a message about the conspiracy between the throne and the palace." The man said, "If you don't act in advance, the consequences will be disastrous." Mulan's heart tightened. She understood that this was not only a test of intrigue, but also a bizarre test. She nodded slightly, took the letter, and when her fingers touched it, the light and shadow inside the letter flashed like water waves, reflecting the hidden crises in the palace and possible changes in the future. Mulan took a deep breath and silently thought in her heart, "Since you can't control love, then control all external controllable forces." Chapter 15. In the days that followed, Mulan secretly planned and conspired with credible people to investigate the source of the shadow in the palace. She gradually grasped the intelligence and discovered that someone was secretly plotting to overthrow the imperial power, and hinted that Song Yuchen would face unprecedented challenges. Every clue was like a sharp blade, piercing her heart and the reality she had to endure. However, Mulan's heart was not crushed, and she used her wisdom and calmness to resolve the conspiracies one by one. Every time she moves, she seems to be stepping on thin ice, and if she makes a mistake, she may be doomed. In this bizarre court, the only person she can trust is herself. Chapter 16. One night, Mu Langzhen accidentally learned that Song Yuchen's attitude had changed and began to ask her for her opinion in private. However, she quickly understood that this attention was more of an intellectual recognition than an emotional closeness. She felt slightly bitter in her heart, but she also knew that only calmness and strategy could gain a foothold in this court. She secretly decides, whether he loves her or not, she must make herself indispensable. This palace is a stage of power and a testing ground for the mind. She looked up at the night sky, the cold light and moonlight intertwined, and a flash of perseverance flashed in her eyes. Love was no longer an end, but an accessory to the process. Chapter 17. There was a sudden rumor in the palace, and an uninvited guest broke into the forbidden palace, causing alarm. Mulan looked at the situation coldly. She had long been accustomed to staying calm in the face of danger. She used clever words and light and shadow court layouts to lure the intruders into traps and avoid catastrophe. In the dead of night, Mu Langzhen sat in front of the window, and the moonlight fell on her cold and sober face. She knew that this was just the norm of bizarre court life, and crises and conspiracies would never stop. But she also understands that she has learned how to survive, take control, and fight back in the face of these challenges. Chapter 18. In the next few days, Mu Langzhen secretly laid out a subtle alliance with eunuchs and palace maids to grasp more internal information about the court. She cleverly manipulated the situation at the banquet to make the enemy fall into her arrangement step by step. However, she still knew in her heart that the ultimate goal of all these schemes and strategies was not power but survival and self-control. Every successful strategy made her feel a little happy, but it also reminded her that the world of the court is far more dangerous and bizarre than imagined. Chapter 19. One day, Mu Langzhen discovered an ancient scroll hidden in the palace, which recorded the crises and power games that the royal family may face in the future. She flipped through the scroll, light and shadow flashing like flowing water, and each page revealed the complexity and profundity of the intrigue. Thinking secretly in her heart, she understood, only by integrating wisdom and calmness can she truly control the fate of herself and her family. The mysterious symbols mentioned in the scroll aroused her strong curiosity, and these symbols seemed to influence court decisions and the imperial power structure. Mu Langzhen decided to study secretly and turn the unknown and crisis into his advantage. Chapter 20. Mu Langzhen began to lay out her own network of intrigues in the palace, and every palace maid, eunuch, and even civil servant became part of her intelligence chain. At the same time, she also secretly observed Song Yuchen's actions and thoughts, and gained insight into his strategies and preferences. She knew in her heart that 10 years of hard work and patience had taught her not only virtuousness, but also wisdom, strategy, and calmness. At night, she stood alone on the tower, overlooking the entire palace, silently thinking in her heart, the cold heart is not ruthless, but the inevitability of protecting oneself and protecting the family. She raised her hand, and the moonlight was reflected on the jade pendant in her hand. The light flickered, just like the bizarre court road in the future, full of challenges and possibilities. Chapter 21. A sudden palace banquet shocked Mu Lan's heart. Song Yuchen actually invited foreign envoys from afar. These people were carrying ancient and mysterious ritual items, and their breath was filled with exotic magic. Mu Langzhen stood under the throne, his eyes cold, and he secretly calculated in his heart, the arrival of these envoys means a new political game, and it may also involve the balance of power within the court. During the banquet, the envoy suddenly displayed an ancient crystal ball, and the light and shadow in the ball flowed, as if reflecting the secrets of the entire imperial city. Mu Lan's heart trembled slightly, and she quickly judged, this is not only diplomatic etiquette, but also a test of imperial power and her wisdom. She raised her eyebrows slightly, and her tone was soft and cold. Can this ball interpret the secret of the palace? The envoy smiled slightly, his eyes unfathomable. The queen is indeed very wise, and she is exactly the person we want to test. Mu Lan smiled secretly in her heart. The bizarre court life added another layer of difficult challenges. Chapter 22. After the banquet ended, Mu Langzhen took the crystal ball back to the palace and carefully observed its changes in light and shadow. Light and shadow flow like water, and every wave of flickering seems to reveal the hidden conspiracies and possible future changes in the palace. She pondered for a long time and gradually formed a plan in her heart. Since these foreign envoys brought unknown power, she must seize the opportunity and use her wisdom to firmly hold the power in the palace in her own hands. In the dead of night, Mu Langzhen sat in front of the window, caressing the surface of the crystal ball, and secretly told herself, love is not available, so I will control my destiny with wisdom and wrists. The chill is not ruthless, but the way to survive. Chapter 23. Soon after, a mysterious assassin appeared in the palace with the intention of assassinating Song Yuchen. Mu Langzhen noticed something unusual on the eve of the banquet and immediately secretly mobilized the palace maids and eunuchs to set up protection. When the assassin infiltrated the court, she observed coldly, the hasta in her hand flashed slightly, and everything was as if it had been premeditated. After the assassin was subdued, Mu Langzhen discovered that he had symbols similar to those of foreign envoys, which meant that the court's intrigue was more complex than she thought. She secretly calculated in her heart, not only to protect the emperor, but also to protect herself, and to take the lead in this power game. Chapter 24. Mu Langzhen began to secretly investigate the background of foreign envoys. discovering that they came from an ancient and mysterious kingdom and possessed the power to influence the power within the royal family. She and her trusted palace mates studied ancient books day and night, trying to decipher the secrets behind the symbols. Every time she opened a page of an ancient book, her eyes flashed with light, and she secretly sighed in her heart. The bizarre events are not only a challenge, but also an opportunity to hone her wisdom and calmness. Chapter 25. At the same time, Song Yuchen's attitude towards Mu Langzhen gradually became subtle. He no longer blindly distanced himself from the court, and occasionally asked her for her views on political affairs. Mu Lan's heart moved slightly, but she knew that this attention was more based on her wisdom than emotion. She smiled slightly and secretly told herself, since love cannot be controlled, then use strategy and risk to protect yourself and your family. Chapter 26. One night, there was a sudden fire in the palace, and the flames reflected the night sky. Mu Langzhen calmly commanded the palace maids to evacuate, and secretly looked for possible arsonists. After investigation, she discovered that the fire was related to the hidden forces in the palace, and there was a deeper conspiracy behind it. She secretly thought in her heart, bizarre events will never stop, and she must see the future one step ahead of anyone else. Chapter 27. Mu Langzhen decided to contact the foreign envoy in person, and she dressed up as a palace maid and quietly infiltrated their tent. She uses her wisdom and courage to engage in psychological games with the envoys, trying to find out their true intentions. The envoy was surprised by her wit and calmness, and a hint of admiration flashed in his eyes. Mulan smiled secretly in her heart. Even without love, she can become an existence that cannot be ignored in the bizarre court. Chapter 28. The actions of foreign envoys reveal a surprising secret. Someone is trying to use ancient powers to interfere in the succession to the throne. Mulan's heart was shocked. She knew that this was not only a power struggle, but also a test related to life and death and the safety of the royal family. She began to strategize, using crystal balls and symbols in ancient books to set up countermeasures. Every step is like walking on a tightrope, and if you are not careful, you may be doomed. A touch of perseverance flashed in Mu Langzhen's eyes. The chill is not ruthless, but the inevitability of survival. Chapter 29. During a court ceremony, Mu Langzhen cleverly arranged for foreign envoys and palace conspirators to appear in plain sight. Song Yuchen's face changed slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. His eyes swept across Mulan's heart with rare appreciation. Mulan smiled secretly in her heart. Although love cannot be controlled, wisdom and strategy are enough to make her not to be ignored. That night, she walked alone on the stone path in the garden. Under the moonlight, her heart was relieved. She understands that the bizarre and dangerous things in the court are both challenges and proof of her strength and wisdom. Chapter 30. Fire, light, and shadow, intrigue, undercurrents, everything is under her control. Mu Langzhen sat in front of the window of the palace, looking at the flickering palace lights in the distance, and silently told herself, 10 years of hard work and chills have been exchanged for not only wisdom, but also the power to control fate. She smiled slightly. The moonlight reflected on the jade pendant, shimmering with light, just like her future court road, full of bizarre challenges and infinite possibilities. Chapter 31. The morning sun poured into the hall through the glass windows of the palace, and Mu Langzhen sat in front of the phoenix seat, playing with an ancient jade in her hand. This ancient jade was cleverly obtained by her from a foreign envoy, and it contained hidden runes that could sense potential crises in the palace. There was still a hint of chill between her eyebrows, and her eyes were as cold and far-reaching as winter water. Your Majesty, do you need the Queen to take care of today's court affairs? She asked softly. Song Yuchen nodded, his eyes still calm, but the slight movement of his eyebrows revealed a hint of surprise. He seemed to be gradually relying on her advice. Mulan smiled secretly in her heart. Although love is hard to come by, wisdom and strategy can make her invincible in this court. She spread out the draft of the morning resolution, sliding her fingers across the paper, secretly calculating every possible conspiracy and change in her heart. Every decision is not only to protect the emperor, but also to protect yourself and your family. She understood that the bizarre court life never gave her space to rest and never allowed her to be weak. Underscore 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 on. Chapter 32. As night falls, the garden outside the palace is reflected in the moonlight like a dream, with light and shadow intertwined, and the fragrance of flowers spreading with the wind. Mu Langzhen strolled alone, thinking about the upcoming court ceremony and potential conspiracies. She recalled that the naive and greedy girl 10 years ago has now become a calm and decisive queen. Suddenly, the palace maid reminded in a low voice, "Queen, it seems that someone in the palace is quietly following you." Mu Langzhen frowned slightly, and her heart was alert. The danger in the palace is always closer than imagined. She secretly decided to use light and shadow and the court structure to set traps for uninvited guests to appear. On the garden path, the night light and shadow intertwined. She was like a shadow, light and deadly. Every step is calculated accurately, like a general in a chess game. She wants to turn potential threats into tools for controlling power. Underscore 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 on. Chapter 33. The next day, the court ceremony was held as scheduled, and Mu Langzhen wore a phoenix feather and golden dress and entered the glorious palace. The officials, concubines, and civil and military ministers in the palace all held their breath and focused on her. Her eyes swept over every face, secretly analyzing everyone's intentions and scheming in her heart. Suddenly, a palace maid secretly sent a message. Someone was secretly planning an assassination. Mu Lan's heart moved slightly, and she immediately used the pre-arranged palace light and shadow traps to lock in all potential dangers. The court ceremony went smoothly like a cloud, and all the conspiracies silently collapsed under her control. Song Yuchen stared at her slightly, with a hint of rare appreciation. Mulan smiled secretly in her heart. Love is still uncontrollable, but wisdom and strategy are enough to make her not to be ignored. Underscore 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 on. Chapter 34. After the ceremony, Mu Langzhen secretly summoned several loyal palace maids and eunuchs to assign tasks and intelligence networks. She knows that the bizarre court life is not only a test of wisdom, but also a game of patience and people's hearts. She calculated in her heart, only by mastering information and foreseeing crises can she truly control the fate of herself and the royal family. Late at night, she sat alone in front of the window of the palace, her face illuminated by the moonlight, and her eyes were as deep as ice. She silently told herself, 10 years of hard work and patience have taught her not only virtuousness, but also strategy and calmness. Every chilling is a weapon to protect herself and her family, and it is also a weapon for her to survive in the bizarre court. Underscore 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 on. Chapter 35. One day, Mu Langzhen received a secret letter, which vaguely hinted that there was a force within the palace that was secretly communicating with foreign envoys. She frowned, knowing in her heart that this conspiracy was more serious than ever. She secretly launched an investigation, using crystal balls to observe the internal dynamics of the palace, and arranged several layers of light and shadow traps in the palace. She carefully analyzes and predicts the actions of every palace maid, eunuch, and even civil servant. She knew that any mistake could lead to irreparable consequences, and the bizarre world of the court would never allow her to be negligent. Underscore 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 on. Chapter 36. At night, there was another change in the palace, and an assassin who infiltrated the palace was captured by a light and shadow trap. Mu Langzhen observed coldly and found that the assassin was wearing the same symbol as the foreign envoy. This means that there are secret connections between the court and foreign forces, and may even involve conspiracies to succeed to the throne. She thought to herself, not only to protect the emperor, but also to protect herself and her family, and to uncover the truth behind the conspiracy. The bizarre court life taught her to be calm, decisive and calculating, and every step was a test of wisdom and courage. Underscore 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 on. Chapter 37. Mu Langzhen decided to negotiate with the foreign envoy in person. She changed into light clothes and quietly sneaked into the tent outside the palace. Under the dim light, she engages in a mental game with the envoys, trying to find out their true intentions. The envoy was amazed by her wisdom and calmness, and even showed a hint of respect. She smiled secretly in her heart, even if love is out of control, she can control her own destiny in the bizarre court. While chatting and laughing, she cleverly detected the weaknesses of foreign forces and secretly planned the next countermeasure strategy. Chapter 38. In the next few days, the internal turmoil in the palace was treacherous, and Mu Langzhen took action step by step and cleverly arranged for the conspirators to appear in front of the public. She uses light and shadow and psychological strategies to resolve the crises in the palace one by one while stabilizing her position of power. The success of every strategy is not only a display of wisdom, but also a chilling protection. She silently told herself in her heart, love may not be obtainable, but wisdom and skill can make her never despised in the court. Chapter 39. One night, Mu Langzhen met a mysterious man in the palace. His clothes were like ink, and his eyes were deep, like a prophet who could see through everything. The man whispered, Queen, if you want to maintain your power, it is not only a strategy, but also a test that you did not expect. Mu Langzhen frowned, knowing in her heart that the bizarre court life would continue to test her wisdom, calmness, and courage. She pondered for a long time and decided to rise to the challenge, using her intelligence, light and shadow traps and strategies to control the future situation. At night, she stood alone on the garden path, the moonlight reflecting on it, but her heart was cold but full of perseverance and confidence. Chapter 40. The light and shadow, crisis, and intrigue of the court gradually intertwined into a vast and complex network. Mu Langzhen is like a chess player in a chess game, arranging every move accurately and calmly. She has understood that love is only an accessory, and true survival and control come from wisdom, calmness, and decisiveness. Late at night, she sat alone in the tower, overlooking the entire palace, and the moonlight was reflected on her jade pendant, and the light flickered. The chill never made her flinch, but taught her to control her destiny, cope with bizarre court challenges, and become a presence that cannot be ignored. Chapter 41. The light of dawn shone into the palace through the glass windows of the palace, and Mu Langzhen sat on the phoenix throne, holding a crystal ball in her hand, her eyes flashing with chill and deep thought. Recently, the conspiracy within the court has become more and more complex, and the undercurrents of foreign forces and internal officials are intertwined, and every step is as dangerous as a knife's edge. She gently stroked the surface of the crystal ball, and the light and shadow flowed, as if reflecting the secrets of the entire imperial city. Song Yuchen was sitting on the dragon chair at the moment, his eyebrows were picturesque, but there was a rare attention in his eyes. He said, Lan Xin, what do you think of the recent situation? Mu Lan smiled slightly, and his tone was calm. Your Majesty, I have already laid out all the movements, and if there is any disturbance, everything is under control. This calmness made Song Yuchen's eyes flash with a hint of appreciation, and he secretly sighed in his heart, the queen of the past 10 years is no longer the little woman who only knew how to be docile. Chapter 42. On the eve of the palace ceremony, Mulan secretly arranged an intelligence network to lock down all potential dangers. Her palace maids and eunuchs followed her like shadows, and every move was as precise as a chessboard. At night, she walked alone in the palace garden, the cold wind blew on her face, and the moonlight reflected her cold profile. She silently thought in her heart, the bizarre court life is not only a challenge, but also a testing ground for her wisdom and courage. Suddenly, there was a sound of low footsteps outside the palace. She frowned slightly, and secretly adjusted the arrangement. When the assassin infiltrated, she had already anticipated it and cleverly led it into the trap. The assassin was terrified, but she just glanced at it coldly, her eyes like a knife. The court is not child's play, every action has to bear the consequences. Chapter 43. Foreign envoys suddenly appeared at the court, bringing more mysterious runes and ancient rituals in an attempt to influence the imperial power pattern. Mulan observed quietly, her eyes flashing with wisdom. She used a crystal ball to observe the flow of light and shadow, and secretly devised strategies to gradually expose the intentions of foreign envoys. Every move of the chess game hides murderous intent, and every confrontation is a contest of wisdom and courage. That night, she quietly sneaked into the envoy's camp and started a psychological game with them. The envoy was amazed at her calmness and wisdom, and even slightly respected her. Mulan laughed secretly in her heart. The bizarre incident is not only a test, but also a stage to show her ability to control. Chapter 44. One night, a sudden vision of fire occurred in the palace, and the entire imperial city fell into panic. Mu Langzhen calmly commanded the palace maids and eunuchs to evacuate the officials, while secretly tracing the source of the arson. After investigation, she found that the fire was related to conspirators in the palace and foreign forces secretly colluding. She secretly calculated in her heart, if she doesn't act in advance, the entire imperial city may fall into crisis. Under the light of the fire, Mu Langzhen's shadow was stretched for a long time. She watched every movement in the palace coldly, secretly laying out countermeasures. In the night breeze, a touch of perseverance flashed in her heart. The cold heart is not ruthless, but the way to survive. Chapter 45. The next day, at the court ceremony, Mu Langzhen wore a phoenix feather and golden dress and entered the glorious palace. The officials in the palace, civil and military ministers, and concubines all held their breath and focused on her. She calculated every step in her mind, leading conspirators and foreign forces into her preset traps. During the banquet, she cleverly used light and shadow traps to reveal the conspirators and expose their actions to Song Yuchen. Song Yuchen's brows moved slightly, but he quickly calmed down, and his eyes swept across Mulan's heart, with rare recognition and appreciation. Mulan smiled secretly in her heart. Love may not be available, but wisdom and strategy are enough to make her not to be ignored. Chapter 46. Late at night, Mu Langzhen was alone in the palace. She flipped through ancient books and crystal balls, studying the secrets of exotic runes and possible future changes. Every page of light and shadow flows like telling the dangers and power games of the court. She understands that the bizarre things in the court will not stop, and only wisdom, calmness, and decisiveness can protect herself and her family. The cold heart became her shield for survival in the court and a weapon for her to control her destiny. Chapter 47. Mu Langzhen secretly set up an intelligence network with trusted people to control every movement in the palace. She observed Song Yuchen's behavior and thoughts and gained insight into his strategies and preferences. Every move of the game is precisely calculated, and even uses light and shadow illusions to misjudge the enemy. In the middle of the night, she stood on the tower, overlooking the entire palace, silently thinking in her heart, 10 years of hard work and chilling have been exchanged for not only power, but also the power to control fate. She raised her hand, and the moonlight was reflected on the jade pendant, the light flickering, like a bizarre road in the future, full of challenges and possibilities. Chapter 48. News suddenly came from the palace that foreign forces were trying to use runes and ancient rituals to manipulate the succession to the throne. Mu Langzhen frowned. She knew that this challenge was more dangerous than ever. She secretly uses strategy and intelligence networks to dismantle conspiracies one by one while consolidating her position of power and that of her family. At night, she stood in the palace garden, the cold wind blowing, and the moonlight was like water, reflecting her icy and resolute face. Chilling is no longer pain, but a symbol of wisdom and strength. Chapter 49. The final battle is coming, and the situation inside and outside the court is treacherous, and conspiracies and bizarre events are intertwined. Mu Langzhen strategized and wiped out foreign forces and internal conspirators. She uses light and shadow traps, psychological games, and intelligence networks to perfectly control the entire situation. In the dead of night, Song Yuchen finally faced up to her ability and wisdom. He stared at her in front of the hall, with a rare softness in his eyes. Mulan smiled slightly in her heart. Although love cannot be controlled, she has already controlled the fate of herself and her family. Chapter 50, Finale. The bizarre court turmoil finally subsided, and Mu Langzhen sat on the dragon couch, her eyes cold and resolute. She looks back on her 10 years of hard work and has grown from an innocent girl to a calm, decisive, and wise queen. Love may be uncontrollable, but power, wisdom and chilling make her an existence that cannot be ignored. The palace returned to calm, and the moonlight shone on her jade pendant, shimmering. She smiled slightly. Chilling is not just cold, it is a symbol of survival, control, and strength. The future is bizarre and courty, and she is ready for every challenge. Extra Chapter 1, The Queen's Secret Conversation with a Foreign Envoy. The night was dark, and in the secret room deep in the palace, Mu Langzhen sat opposite the foreign envoy. The candle light shone on her cold and delicate face, and she tapped her fingers on the tabletop and raised her eyebrows slightly, cold and vigilant. The envoy was wearing a black robe, his face was handsome but mysterious, and his eyes were like an abyss, revealing an elusive intention. Queen, do you know that the crystal ball in your hand is extraordinary? The envoy said in a low voice, with respect and a hint of temptation in his tone. Mu Langzhen smiled slightly, her voice like a cold wind. I know that since you brought it, you have your own purpose. He nodded slightly, spread out the rune scrolls on the table, and the light and shadow flowed, as if telling the future crisis of the royal family and the game of power. She studied the scroll carefully, secretly calculating in her heart, if these runes fell into the wrong hands, they would threaten the throne in her life. The envoy saw that she was calm as usual, and a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. The queen is indeed extraordinarily wise and can read the subtle meanings of ancient runes. Mu Langzhen smiled lightly, her eyes like a blade. Wisdom and chilling are never something you foreign forces can measure. Throughout the night, she played chess with the envoys by candlelight, discussing runes, predicting crises, and analyzing internal movements in the court. The envoy gradually understood that this queen was not only a calm and decisive ruler, but also a wise man with extraordinary insight. He secretly decided that if he wanted to gain a foothold in the east, he had to cooperate with her, not fight against her. Dawn broke, the candles went out, only light and shadow flowed in the secret room, and the light in the crystal ball flickered like water. Mulan laughed secretly in her heart. The bizarre court life, no matter how many challenges she had, could not stop her from controlling her destiny. Underscore 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 un. Extra Chapter 2, Late Night Encounter in the Palace Garden. The moonlight is like water, sprinkled in the palace garden, the night breeze blows, and the fragrance of flowers and dew mixes into a rich atmosphere. Mu Langzhen held a jade flute and quietly strolled among the stone paths. The candlelight and moon shadows intertwined, and her shadow was stretched slender and elegant. Suddenly, there were footsteps, and she raised her eyes to see Song Yuchen appear like a shadow, with a rare softness between her eyebrows. It's late at night, the queen hasn't rested yet? He asked in a low voice, with a hint of concern and doubt in his tone. Mu Langzhen smiled slightly and responded lightly, the garden in the middle of the night is the most suitable for thinking about the crisis of the palace. He approached, his eyes swept over the jade flute in her hand, with a rare smile in his tone. If it weren't for palace affairs, the queen would have thought that this garden also had tenderness and freedom. A hint of complex emotions flashed in her eyes, but she remained calm. Freedom and gentleness may be the fantasy of the past, but reality only has strategy and chills. The two briefly faced each other in the garden, their mutual respect and understanding flowing in the silent atmosphere. Although love is still out of control, this late-night encounter allows each other to find a trace of solace in the bizarre court. In the dead of night, Mu Langzhen walked back to the dormitory alone, the moonlight reflecting her resolute and cold face. She silently thought in her heart, the cold heart is not only to protect herself, but also the foundation of her invincibility in the court. Underscore 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 un. Extra Chapter 3, The Crystal Ball's Prophetic Night. Late at night, the palace was quiet, and Mu Langzhen sat at the desk, holding a crystal ball in her hand. Light and shadow flow in the ball, fluctuating like a river, reflecting the crises hidden throughout the imperial city and the possible changes in the future of the court. She closed her eyes, focused on observing every change in light and shadow, and silently thought about the strategy in her heart. Inside the crystal ball, light and shadow intertwined, and there were scenes of the secret actions of powerful officials within the palace and the imminent intervention of foreign forces. She raised her eyebrows slightly, thinking in her heart, if you don't lay out in advance, the imperial city will fall into chaos. Throughout the night, she recorded changes in light and shadow, set traps, adjusted layouts, and even predicted possible countermeasures. When dawn broke, she put the crystal ball back into the jade box and breathed a long sigh of relief. She understands that the bizarre future is unpredictable, but wisdom and chill allow her to control the situation in advance. underscore 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 un. Extra Chapter 4, The Queen's Chilling Thoughts. In the early morning, the tower of the palace, the morning light shone on Mu Langzhen's cold and resolute face. She overlooked the entire palace, the palace lights flickered, the garden paths were deep, and the entire imperial city presented a bizarre beauty in the morning light. She looked back on her mental journey over the past 10 years, from an ignorant girl to a calm and decisive queen. Every conspiracy, every crisis, and every bizarre incident has made her wisdom and courage more and more mature. Chilling is no longer pain, but strength, not cold, but a necessary means of survival and control of destiny. She raised her hand, touched the jade pendant, her eyes were deep and bright, and she silently thought in her heart, the future is full of strange and bizarre courts, no matter the wind or rain or challenges, I am ready, and the cold heart will be my most reliable shield.